Welcome back to the Doom is Dead podcast, sponsored by In the Keep at inthekeep.com and the multiplayer Doom Federation at doomfederation.com. It's been brought up a few times that we should properly introduce ourselves instead of making everyone guess who the hell we are and which one of us is actually talking. I am one of the hosts, Human Bones, and I helped create the multiplayer Doom Federation alongside our other host, Do. And you don't normally hear his voice until we get a few minutes in, which has been a real shame. So please do say a few words.
Hello, everyone. I don't really have an intro prepared, so...
That's okay. As long as they get to know who you are, I think we're good with that. Today on the podcast, we are lucky to have one of Doom Multiplayer's fiercest competitors, who just so happens to also be one of the friendliest guys around. I am speaking, of course, about our good friend Dsparil. Dsparil is widely regarded by his peers as one of the strongest players in the game right now. He has been an active participant in several seasons of the World Doom League and the Doom Masters League, establishing himself as a menace throughout the regular season and the playoffs. He has also performed strongly in both Take the Crown events in 2020, winning the second qualifier of the duel event and placing in the top 8 of the FFA event. Dsparil is also a well-established figure of the Jumpmaze scene, the racing mod which focuses on pure movement speed and skill. From there, it was only a small leap to the world of speedrunning, where he's been quickly building a reputation for himself in recent times. As of today, he holds several episode run records for the Ultimate Doom. Please welcome to the show, Dsparil.
Hello. I'm actually kind of surprised. You did your homework on me. I'm flattered, to be honest, but thank you. Thank you for that. Everything you just said was pretty much, like pretty good summary of my Doom career. Yeah.
Great. Well, that was a great episode. I guess we should just end it there. No, I mean, we have to do our homework. I can't just start talking, and we got to give people the proper introduction, especially when there's someone like you on the other side.
By which you mean you ask me to do the homework?
Hey, we have to work together. I have my perspective and my experiences with Dsparil, and do love speedrunning, so it all meshes together really well. So, Dsparil, you have a pretty unique story. I think I honestly don't know any other Doom players that are from Syria. There might be maybe one or two that have come around. So I think that gives you a really unique perspective on, not just Doom, but gaming itself, because pretty much everyone we've spoken to has been, part of the free world at large. So why don't you tell us about your history, your gaming history, and how you found yourself playing Doom?
Yeah, as a Syrian, there aren't that many Syrian gamers, not just talking about Doom specifically, but just in general. Gaming is such a bizarre thing to do in Syria, and even to a certain extent, even the entirety of the Middle East. Just for us, the Arabian culture, spending time on your computer on gaming is pretty much thought to be really a bad thing to do. So as a Syrian gamer, I had to go through a lot of things, both in terms of quality of my setup or my gaming or my internet, etc., and in terms of being able to sit down and play on my computer. In terms of Doom, I've basically known Doom from childhood. I was 3 years old. Pretty much any other millennial. We all know Doom from our childhood, but most of us forget about it. I, on the other hand, since it was the first game I've ever looked into, the first game that I've seen on a screen for the first time, it just caught my eye, and I was never able to forget about it. So eventually, with the years passing, I pretty much it was during the Syrian war that when I decided to sit down on my computer and play Doom again. So technically speaking, it was around 2011 when the Syrian war happened.
Oh, so right when the war started.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
it was like in 2011. The lack of being able to uh, get out of my house for any reason at all basically helped me like bring up excuses to my family to just sit on my computer all day and do nothing. So I eventually like got really bored from doing anything on my computer, and I decided to launch up Doom again. And I've realized that even though it's such an old game, it's still really fun to play. And that's when I decided to try and look to see if the game is still not just being played online, but just like how do I put it?
No, yeah, just checking if the entirety of the game is still alive. Like, yeah,
Yeah, basically,
if
yeah,
Doom is dead.
yeah, right. Pretty much what Du said, where just check if the community is still alive, if the game is still thriving, uh, and the first thing that I came into was Skull Tag, but not Skull Tag as a community or the forums or anything, but just a program alone. So I would spend months just playing with bots offline and having like imaginary conversations with them. I know it's pathetic, but I had to start somewhere, all right? Uh, and then like I think I ended up like eventually getting bored of the bots, obviously, and I started searching again, and that's when I stumbled upon Z Demon. I think it was around 2012 when I stumbled upon Z Demon. So I would play like regular cooperative of like the Doom IWATs, and I would just go in, see like one or two players, and I would simultaneously want to open like 30 different conversations with them, but at the same time I would say absolutely nothing because I'm afraid of like saying or like upsetting them or being an idiot or something like that. But then eventually like I moved back to Skulltag once I realized that it had an online community as well. Since the Z Demon kept the vanilla settings, which I honestly didn't like that back then. So when I found out that Skulltag has an online community of its own, I decided to go there as well to test it. Unfortunately, the only thing that grabbed my attention back then was Zombie Horde, which is a pretty popular online mode for those of you out there who are not aware what it is.
Which is like a co-op thing where people play against hordes of monsters, right?
It's basically like just two teams, the human team or the
Oh,
Marines or whatever you want to call them. The other one's just zombies that try to infect the humans and turn them into zombies.
okay.
I've actually played that for quite a while. I think somewhere around like 2 years straight, nothing but zombie horde. I eventually got bored of it as well, and some of the people in Zombie Horde have been telling me about other mods such as Jumpmaze and GVH, Ghouls versus Humans, and they've also been telling me about competitive. So by then, like once I got bored of Zombie Horde, I've decided to move on and try other things. And while the other mods were like also really fun, but the thing that caught my attention was competitive. The fact that it kept its like vanilla gameplay, but made it so much more fun. And like even back then, the skill cap for it was like really high for me. I would just watch everyone like move around and shoot with such precision that I would I would like completely like lose confidence. I was like, I'm never getting this good. But when was I? I think, yeah, I think now that I think about it, the thing. Mm,
Yeah, it's sort of amazing. Like you're describing, uh, sort of like a rise from a complete casual, like who starts playing with bots and he thinks like, oh, this is awesome, I'm killing these bots, and then you progress slowly to some co-op stuff with some people online, then you go into the first hints of competitive scene. It's sort of such a like you could almost track the progress from like a scrub to now your like status of the best DM player around and one of the top speedrunners and everything. Like, nice.
Everything I've mentioned so far, the reason why I'm mentioning them all is that as a gamer from the Middle East, everything that I had to go through was something that I never thought is humanly possible. I was like, there's no way that Doom has an online community. There's no way that I'll be able to play this with other people around the world. It was so bizarre for me. So when it actually happened, it just like filled my heart with joy. It made me so happy knowing
yeah,
that
like,
a game that I really liked has a community.
Yeah, like exploring the unknown was the self-motivating factor. I would like to ask, like, this you said that you were basically you started playing during the war, and in Syria, like you're from Damascus, right?
Yes.
So, like, what was the internet like? Was it available, like, or were there like blackouts? Because that's a pretty crazy situation.
Oh yeah, yeah. I probably should have dived into more details during that era. In terms of the internet, uh, before the war, the internet was like all right. The During that time, like you'd have a typical connection of like 4 or 8 megabits per second. But once
Like,
the
this is
war
still
begun,
just to jump in. This is basically the situation in like Damascus, which is a big city with like relatively uh, high infrastructure and everything.
yeah,
That's
it's
not
basically an urban
exactly the
area. Yeah.
case for the rest of Syria. Yeah, I mean that this situation, like the having the internet of that quality, that was like you were living in Damascus, so that was available in there specifically. Probably not as much in the rest of Syria,
Oh,
but when the
definitely.
war
Like
struck,
it's
all of the sudden, even Damascus was hit with all sorts of trouble.
yeah. The majority of Syria doesn't have that kind of technology. The majority of Syria, especially back then, like we're basically like the medieval age, where it's just like farmers, regular life, something like that. But the few urban areas in Syria, like Damascus and a few other cities, like it did have some technology. We had internet, we had everything that we needed. And since even though I'm Syrian, I've spent most of my life outside of Syria, so that also like helped with me being aware of the technology. Since United Arab Emirates was more technologically advanced than Syria, so I would like my father would be like constantly bringing the technology with him from the United Arab Emirates to our house, including like high tech computers and all that. But even then, once the war started, our internet quality like hit rock bottom in every single way. Uh, like in terms of internet quality, we dropped down to like a speed of 512 kilobits per second, and and the router that was originally right beside my computer was now at the opposite end of the house with like the infrastructure of our house has all those like jamming signals. Are there? Is that what they're called? Basically, like jamming objects. So if I try to use wireless on my computer all the way to the router, I would have around like a ping of 2,000. I remember trying it on ghouls versus humans. I would constantly have a ping of 2,000. It would never go down. It was hell. But but eventually, like after like several months of whining, my my father finally like uh, did a hole in the wall or something. I don't actually remember what he did exactly, but I was able to connect wire instead, and the internet quality actually like went up a little bit more by then for it to at least be playable.
Well,
Uh,
right, because I mean, even now, even now for you, your ping's still not great, and that's I think part of why people think that you're. I mean, besides obviously your playing ability and all of that, but I think that's part of why you're viewed as such a dominant player because your connection really isn't great, and you're still beating the crap out of all of us. So yeah, just wanted to throw that
well,
in there.
to be fair, like the internet quality right now and the situation with Syria in general right now is almost as bad as it was 8 years ago. But we'll get into that later. uh, where was I? The problem with Syria is that we'd also like constantly have our internet just cut off. Our electricity would suddenly cut off. Even sometimes our water supply would just suddenly cut off. We'd never know what's gonna come next. So I would be in a constant like in a situation where I cannot really commit myself to anything for too long.
Yeah, so I mean, hearing about all those things, it doesn't really even sound real. I mean, and it's just incredible that you know you were able to get through that situation. I mean, I know it's like you said, it's not so great right now, but I mean, to
Well,
be able to, yeah, go ahead.
we can sort of emphasize these days about the part where you can't go out and do anything outside. But like, imagine this situation without the internet.
Yeah, it would basically be like suddenly just pitch black, no electricity, and no internet. We'd have literally nothing to do. I would be like, well, they cut off the internet. Guess I'm going to sleep 7 p.m. today. It was really bad.
Well, you
But
could play with your brothers.
hell no. Like what? I mean, problem is that two of my younger brothers were like 7 or 8 years uh, difference in age, but like our interests are completely different. And my
Okay.
older
Yeah, yeah,
brother,
yeah.
who is two
I was
years older
teasing.
than me, is like he would actually constantly like still go out despite the problems. He would like ignore what my dad says and just like keeps going out and tries to hang out with his friends and all that. He usually get a scolding at the end of the night and then grounded for like the next 2 weeks, but he'd still do it again anyways. But I'd never really like spent time with him. So in a sense that was good in that I had nothing else to do but to sit on my computer, and which ended up with me playing Doom.
So fast forward a few years where we left off. Like, so you're, you know, testing out the waters for the competitive scene. How did you get into that?
Well, that's such a weird time too to have started playing Skulltag or Zandronum because I mean, I'm pretty sure Skulltag became Zandronum in 2012, which is right around the time that you started playing, and those mods were big. I mean, it, there wasn't really that competitive. Well, maybe there was, but I don't think it was the same as maybe like the Z-Daemon community in 2012, the competitive community. So it was just it's a really interesting time for someone to have started playing online Doom because it was just not. It was very heavy in the mod scene, so Zombie Horde, GVH, that kind of thing.
Yeah, in terms of mods, it was still like thriving. So for the longest time I've played Zombie Horde, I just like didn't really think about whether the community is alive or dead or anything like that. I just saw players in the Zombie Horde server. I was like, well, time to spend several more hours today on Zombie Horde. But once I got out of that and into the competitive, I think the person who dragged me into the competitive for the first time, I think it was Teletha, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, Teletha created the clan Mithril, which for the Doomers out there, it's a pretty famous clan, let's just say that. I think it was Teletha that dragged me out from Zombie Horde, and I joined their clan and I started doing like clan scrims and stuff like that. I don't remember when it was exactly, though.
Wasn't Teletha just an alias for Zaken?
No. Teletha was...
I'm pretty sure he used that alias at some point.
If he did, he was probably pulling a joke on Teletha then, because it was a pretty big story back then with Teletha. Like, it was basically a guy pretending to be a girl, and he had several aliases.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, eventually, Wario and the A3 people drove him out. Which, once the clan died, Teletha's clan died, Dragon, basically started hanging out with me back then. But unfortunately, I didn't join his clan yet. I joined a different clan. But eventually, basically, the one who actually dragged me into competitive leagues and tournaments, it was Dragon. I believe the first tournament I've signed up to was one that Stall hosted. I don't remember the name of the tournament or league, though. I'm trying to remember.
It was something on Zandronum, right?
Yeah, it was on Zandronum, yes. But I just can't remember. It was around 2013. That was the very first tournament that I've signed up to. Unfortunately, though, I wasn't drafted. Probably for the better good. My connection probably would have not handled an entire tournament. But 2014 was when I got drafted for the first time in a Doom League. It was IFL, I believe. But yeah, basically, once Dragon dragged me into the competitive community, I've never got out. I've been playing in almost every league since then. Problem is that I wasn't aware that IDL was a thing at all, which is why I've never signed up to any of them. But eventually in 2017...
at that point, IDL sort of was dying. It was the final seasons. So
yeah.
It's just around that time when IDL was basically dying and WDL was becoming a thing. So you're just at the edge of when things were changing rapidly in the community.
Yeah, Skulltag died and Zandronum came, and then IDL died and WDL came. So, I'd imagine that the activity of the competitive scene was at an all-time low. I've still somehow managed to stay despite the inactivity. But I've never, now that I think about it, I wasn't aware of WDL all the way until 2017. That's when I first signed up to WDL.
Yeah,
right, and that's
that long-running problem of presentation and promotion, because we were always just advertising in the same old circles. So the influx of new people was really poor and slow at all times, basically, because you just posted to the same forums, and the forums were long dead and basically used by the same people. So there was never any newcomer, except for random stragglers who would just randomly trip in.
Yeah, well, it was once again Dragon that dragged me into WDL.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about Zandronum is it never really had... It tried, but it never really had a successful CTF league. I mean, you can't really have... I mean, I guess you can now, but back then it was really hard to have a successful league that competed with the IDL or the WDL because they were running 3 seasons a year, and so even though that stuff was on Z-Daemon and then later Odamex, there was always this faction of people that really liked Zandronum. So I think IFL was Dragon's League, was it not?
Yes.
And so IFL was Dragon's League. It was European, so that was, the poor European players have been ignored for a decade and a half. But I think I played with you in an IFL league, and I didn't know who you were. I just I happened to. I think Dragon maybe made me sign up or something. I don't know. You know how Dragon is, and I ended up on a team with you and Blitz of all people, and somebody else,
And Toby.
and that was the first time. And Toby, right, and that was the first time I knew you, and that must have been around the time that you signed up for WDL, which was 2017. Which at that point is like it's 3 seasons, 3 years in. So it's really interesting how you went from being undrafted, well, even further back, playing with bots by yourself, zombie horde, joining a CTF league and going undrafted, and then just like bursting out. And now you're a captain more or less everywhere that you can, when you have the time. And so it's a really cool story. I mean, there's not many players that can do that.
I think another factor that another factor that came into play eventually, it was after I like became a competitive player, is that because of issues we had, I would constantly be traveling between Syria and United Arab Emirates, where in Syria, while I'd have more free time, I'd be basically unable to use my mic and communicate with my team, and I would have like worse internet. And in UAE, I would have less free time, but I would have much better internet, and I'd be always like alone in my room, and I'd be able to communicate my team. Unfortunately, I would like end up not signing up to many things because, as I said, I wouldn't have the time for it. So I'd constantly have to change between being free but not being able to play, or being able to play but not having the time to do it.
So these trips to United Arab Emirates, that's like you were traveling there with your father, or how did that like occur?
Yeah, we'd basically be like, we'd move like twice a year, I believe. With like, it would be me and my brothers and my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Just move and then settle for several months and then go back, settle for several months and then go back.
Is there any reason behind doing that?
It was mostly like financial issues, especially with uh, the war happening in Syria.
Right.
My father's financial issues would like hit rock bottom, and he'd travel to UAE and then like make a few bucks there, and then come back to Syria, and then lose them again.
And like staying in the UAE wasn't possible, or was there like
It's
you had
mostly
to return
because
back
we
to
already
wider
had
family?
a house that we own in Syria, but in UAE we'd have to constantly like rent an apartment.
Well, so when you started actually signing up, on a larger scale, like when your first introduction to WDL, 2017, were you in Syria at that time, or you were in UAE?
I was in UAE.
Okay, that's what I thought. Because, yeah, you got drafted onto,
It was
what team were
Demons,
you on?
the dream team.
Okay, right, and that was, I think, you started showing up in private CTF, and people were like, "Well, who the fuck is this guy?" And then remember thinking when Demon Sphere drafted you, like, how is anyone ever going to score a flag on you guys? I mean, that must have been really cool to to be your first season in WDL, to be drafted onto a team like that and get that kind of experience.
Yeah, I think back then I had a ping of 230. Just remembering it was a painful experience.
That's it?
People would like shoot twice before I would shoot, but I think I was the main runner of the team when I first started. But Demon Sphere eventually trusted me and started putting me on defense instead.
Like I'm still kind of amazed that that's even possible. Like, okay, we've made strides in ping reconciliation, but still, like, quarter a second of extra lag. That's a hefty sum. Like, were
It
you
was
at a
really painful.
position that? Yeah, like, were you at a position where it's just like suddenly it started getting sort of like better, that you just started predicting people, or how's that even possible?
Uh, I think it was like my ping was just generally bad back then, so I was kind of used to it. Even on Zandronum, it was mostly like American prives that was happening. So even on Zandronum, I would play with a ping of 200, which is, I mean, sure, it's 30 ping less, but it's still pretty high. So I was used to it, but what I wasn't used to was Automix, because back then I was playing on Automix for the first time, so I had to like adjust to that. But I don't know what made Demon Sphere change his tactics and put me on defense, but I guess it worked out since we made it all the way to finals.
Right, and that's like, imagine that, your first season signing up for something, you get on Demon Sphere's team, he trusts you enough to put you on defense, and you guys make it all the way to the finals. I mean, that's just, it's like Du said, it's like, it's amazing that we've gotten to this point, because I can't, like, right now, okay, I live in California, and so if I'm going to play on a European server, my ping is, probably about 200, and I mean, maybe like 10 years ago, when I still had reflexes or something, I could play, but now I find it really, really difficult. And I don't know. It's not easy. So then to look at someone like you, I'm still amazed. So yeah, you did really well that first season, and then you had a couple seasons after that as well that you've played. I think like 3 or 4 more seasons. Do you captain in the WDL?
It was the next season, actually, I believe, when Altstab asked me if I was willing to cap, and I did. I believe it was, yes, the name was Quantum Power is what I called the team. I drafted Dragon, I'm 1 HP U0, and Langrenus, which sounds like a really good team right now, but back then, like, people just thought, like, who the hell is Langrenus? Who the hell is I'm1? Like, Dsparil is screwed with that team. But even then, we managed to make it all the way to quarterfinals. I think, yeah, we faced you in quarterfinals and lost, right?
Yeah, that was a crazy game, because now you're a captain, which is pretty crazy. This is like an insane rise really quickly, and so you get Dragon for $28, and I've done this too. I've taken Dragon for $28, and people are always, they just laugh at it because they don't maybe they don't know how to draft. I don't know, but then you pick up I am 1 HP U0, and he's not a name that people are like going for every single season necessarily, because he's not quite as active as the rest of us. But he's still a really good player. So you proved right away that you were able to actually draft a team. And then, yeah, to have Langrenus stashed on your bench, like, you look at it now and you're like, holy crap. But you had a really good season. And I think if I remember that game, It was like a 6-round game or something silly. Like you guys, one or two things go your way, you could have made it to the semifinals, in your first season as a captain. So, yeah, I mean, you basically. I talked about this a little bit with Ralphus's podcast last week or last month, and there was not really room for European players or basically anyone that's not an American player to win, and players like you change that thinking, because if you look at who won in like the first 8 or 9 seasons of the IDL, it was all American players. Nobody would ever draft a European as a third and expect to win a Master Bowl or a finals. And so, to have teams like yours, that team was completely,
It was a Euro team,
not full of,
technically.
yeah. And it's like, you guys did so well. I mean, I think you're part of the the force that has flipped things around, where people are now like, yeah, I can take someone from a different continent, and it doesn't matter what their ping is, they can still play better than this person or this person. So you've kind of changed the thinking of how people draft and how people look at teams. So it's really, really cool.
It's also like it speaks to the progress of the ports that has been made. Because I don't know if you remember that, but at one point in IDL there was actually a Euro team, because Nero was a captain. Like, yeah, that was an experiment, and it ended up being a team of him, Mortology, and me, and it didn't go well. Even though like we had Mortology, who was still one of the best fraggers of all time. Like that guy was a machine. But simply the demon, the old one, 108, not going to happen. Like you would fail that super important shot, So like 10 years, fast forward 10 years, and you can see how things changed in the entire thinking. Like, yeah, maybe we can even use like Brazilians. Maybe we can use people from the Middle East. That's like, holy crap. That wasn't possible at all around 2010.
I was actually not aware that I've changed this perspective of the American players, I guess, since it was mostly American leagues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's been the history. I mean, we've tried to do small little things. Like the precursor to Vengeance was Vendetta, and
That's
yeah.
I can tell. Basically, first of all, there was ECDL, which was the European league that mimicked IDL, and that was a pretty huge one in Europe. Actually, that it was just one season, but it was pretty wildly successful, to be honest. And then there was Vendetta, that was organized by Thaddeus of UBR, and yeah, that was clan based, and the first one was clan based at least, and that was a pretty like it was full of drama, as everything with clans involved. That was so dramatic.
But it was the first most serious attempt at making a European capture the flag tournament event.
But then there was the first Vengeance, or wait, like it was still called Vendetta, but like
No, I think we called it Vengeance.
And no, I mean still organized by
Vendetta 2.
Europeans,
Yeah.
but it was already using like sign up teams, not clans. Because the clan stuff, like the entirety of the clan structure was being destroyed, torn down, everything. So that was, and this one is the first one where I remember that actually like a lot of Americans signed up for the European League. And it was a success. Like they actually contributed, and it was really really tight. Like I think we actually
I signed up. K5MYH. It was me, Mike Hale, No Star, White Boy. There was somebody else there too.
yeah, and I think in the end my team was actually second because we lost by flag count to a team that was Devisin, someone else, and Rust King, if I remember correctly. So it was like two Europeans and an American for the like, you know, the
Right.
main event. And the team, my team was, I think it was something ridiculous. Like, okay, it was Devisin, Terska, and Rust King, so that makes sense. But my team was me, Titan, and I'm not sure who. But it was a strong team.
But I mean, that was, to bringing that up, that was really the only example of a European presence or European league going on. And then I really liked the idea after playing in Vendetta of the flags being the primary indicator of, not rounds won, but flags scored. And so when Du and I were running the IDL, that's when we came up with, we did a small vengeance thing. We didn't want to name it Vendetta, so we were like, oh, what's another, interesting vengeance? So very creative. And so we ran that, and that was also European, but it just never caught on. So all these major leagues or whatever have been all based on American servers, New York, Chicago, Atlanta. And so it's really never been completely open to the world. So that's mostly why you never would see a European player win. And it was only until the stuff with Z-Daemon, but eventually, once we moved to Odomex and Zandronum had some development behind it as well, I think you started to see more players, more openings for players from different continents to be able to be dominant in leagues. But it's still, there's still never been something that is completely 100% geared towards European players. So I think that's just been the way it's been.
Yeah. The European leagues and tournaments were always sort of one-off events, at least in the CTF scene. Like, honestly, we basically had more duel stuff than America did in like the turn of the the first decade, like around 2010, 2012. That was when American dueling was sort of like at its lowest. And everyone was just playing IDL and WDL. So it was like a trade-off of like a different focus, because this was the time when Europe was really, really seeing like a peak of a new generation of duelists. Anyway, okay, so let's move to like the.
Well, okay, so pushing ahead to a little bit more present day, the last 2 to 3 years, when we started the MDF, Dsparil, you were one of the first people that I thought I wanted to have as part of the council, because of all of these things. Really, it's the fact that you started off and just kind of you just took off and became this dominant player, and so your perspective on Doom is pretty unique. And so you're actually, if you didn't know this, you're actually the most winningest player in MDF history. You've won the most events out of anybody. So that's, I'm sure you knew that. But moving to last year we did Take the Crown Duel and Take the Crown FFA, which you participated in both of them. In the duel event, actually, you won the second of 4 qualifiers, and that advanced you to the final bracket. And you performed really well throughout the whole tournament. But I was curious what your, going through all the mods that you played in all CTF and how you approached playing in a competitive duel event, because that's, there's a lot of pressure involved in that. And so I'm just curious how you, went about approaching that and what your duel history is, because I'm not sure that you were as well known as a duel player as you are, a CTF player.
My duel history, I believe there's only been 2 instances that I've participated in a duel league. One of them was hosted by Dragon. I can't remember the name though. It was something like ZDC, I believe, Zandronum Duel Championship. Did he host something like that? But it was around
Hey,
like
it sounds familiar to me.
2003.
All these acronyms, I don't know.
Yeah, but basically, I've participated in that twice, which had like separate divisions. I've lost in the first one, and in the second one, I've actually won in my division. The other instance was in MDF itself. We hosted a couple of dual tournaments, and I think I won only once. I'm not sure, but those are basically the only instances that I've had of experience before the Take the Crown. During the Take the Crown tournament, I've actually came into the qualifier without any prior practice or warm up. So I got my butt handed to me the first qualifier. I don't think I even made it to top 8. Did I? I think I won one match and then I lost 2 in a row and I was instantly kicked out. So it was basically a slap. It was like, if you're not gonna take this seriously, you're not gonna get anywhere. So I started from then. I started practicing hard and I properly warmed up before the second qualifier. And pretty much I've had no issues all the way until finals, and everybody knows what happened between me and Ghost Killer during finals. But I mean,
This is a week of training, by the way.
yeah, it was only a week, but it was a lot of practice. Like, I would just go in every day. I was just like, anybody wants to duel? Anybody's dueling right now? All right, let me just jump in real quick. But to be honest, I was pretty dissatisfied with my performance in the Take the Crown duel. Back then, I was in United Arab Emirates. I had my best setup so far, and I've had really good internet. My ping was stable, but for some reason, no matter how much I practiced, I still performed bad, not as good as I was expecting, which is why I ended up losing to Dante. I ended up choking twice from an 8 frag lead towards the end, and then he would beat me by 1 or 2 frags.
Do you think that this had to do more with your nerves and stuff inside your head, rather than any training or quality of connection or the objective stuff?
It was mostly just me performing. I couldn't play well. It was like partly because of nerves, but for some reason during that period, I don't know, maybe I was burnt out or just generally not playing as well. I'm not really sure what the reason was, but I just couldn't play as good as I did a year prior to the Take the Crown tournament or something like that. I wasn't at my prime, basically.
Then, of course, in the FFA tournament, you got to the finals fairly comfortably through the 7-hour grinder.
Oh yeah.
But then I think the final was a bit disappointing for you, right?
Kind of, yeah. Well, the Take the Crown FFA was a completely different case because I was actually in Syria and I was like somewhat playing well, much better than I did back in Take the Crown duel tournament. But I've had really bad internet and a really bad setup, like gaming setup. So it was the exact opposite of the Take the Crown duel tournament. So like I've managed to make it really well during the qualifier or the 7 hour hell that we had to go through, basically. But then during finals, I believe I've had a little bit of packet loss issues, which was like really bad for me on Automix. I feel like Automix always punishes me for losing packets, which was yeah, like in a finals, like the Take the Crown death match, it was really frustrating.
Oh yeah, because everyone in the final was top tier, and yeah, you don't get second chances.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Bones remembers the lash out I had on one of the maps. I believe it was Alex Max map, but he probably took it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. It's, when you have an event like that and there's money on the line and, it's a big deal. I mean, obviously, no, I would not take anything personally. I mean, I would probably be just as frustrated, and I have been in the past. So, no, I understand. But, I mean, you still finished in top 8, and that's a pretty big achievement because, top 8 of 75 players. I mean, that's pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm. I think I tied in 4th place, right? I think I was
believe
1
so.
point away
Yeah.
from 3rd place as well. It just proves that the competition was there as
Yeah.
well. Except for Lang, who was 1st place.
And yeah, it was sort of like almost disappointing for us as casters, and like Lang so dominated the finals that it was like, okay, Lang is winning. We're watching this fight for second place. This could have gone better if it was more exciting. But he just destroyed the tournament.
As I've mentioned before, since the conditions were the exact opposite, although I played well and I had a little bit of a lash out towards the end, but like at the end of the day, I just looked back and I was like, there's nothing more I could have done. I've played my absolute best, but I just like the conditions and just my situation in general didn't allow me to unlock my full potential? Question mark.
That makes it funny because when you had that like sort of best conditions in the duels,
I started
you
playing
actually
bad. Yeah.
you proved you're human, and you did what a lot of top tier players do and choke when it's most important.
Well, just yet another important tournament that I end up losing. I've been like this for like 8 years now. Yeah, I've been on an 8 year loss streak.
Well, you actually in MDF you have a pretty successful winning streak, right?
Oh yeah, like if we're talking deathmatch alone, outside of the Take the Crown deathmatch tournament and one more that Lang took, I've actually won every single deathmatch tournament that I have participated in.
There you go.
But in terms of like major capture the flag leagues or any tournament that had a prize pool, I've lost every single one.
Well, don't feel bad about that. I mean, that was the running joke with me for quite a while. Was that I lost my first 3 finals appearances. So it took me like 10 years to win something. So, there's so many factors that are involved. It's not just individually. I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes you go up against teams that are just they're going to beat you no matter what, and sometimes whatever, you just don't play as well as you thought you would. I mean, it doesn't really take away from anything, but you have, like I mentioned, and you guys are talking about, you have been the most successful player in the MDF events, which is to put it into context, I just won my first MDF event like 2 months ago for the first time in like 2.5 years. So,
Oh, by the way,
yeah.
I want to talk about one more thing. Like you were talking about like these that like your situation and the conditions that were different in UAE and Syria, and like you've been on voice chat with us for quite a lot of these events when we would just be in the common lobby basically, and sometimes you would be like, oh, I gotta cut off, or I gotta fix my internet, or I gotta like. There seem to be a lot of problems with just the general connection. Like, is that like to this day a problem where constantly you have to be fixing your internet, or someone's hugging your connectivity?
Oh yeah. Well, this is something that happens only in Syria, by the way. In UAE, my internet is always, uh, even if it's shared, it's strong enough to never make me lag. But in Syria, especially after the war subsided, whenever I come here to Syria, I am sharing my internet, which is 4 megabits per second, by the way. I'm sharing it with, back then, I think I shared it with 13 family members. It was me, my three brothers, my parents, my grandmother, my aunt, and her five daughters. And they all had like a computer or a phone or something like that, and I would have to run around and tell every single one of them, hey, I have a tournament right now, can you please stop playing on YouTube or anything.
So in fact, you're spreading hatred towards Doom in Syria uh, by telling everyone to stop using internet
Yeah,
because you have to play Doom.
my cousins and my aunt were a special case. They're not living in the same house, but we have a like basically a cable that's running through from our router all the way to their apartment, which is like 2 floors below us. So like every time I start lagging, I would just get up and unplug the cable and then sit back down, and then literally like 2 minutes later, they immediately start calling the house line.
I kind of have the same situation here actually because my Wi-Fi is horrible. So, but my router's all the way in the other room, so I have this like 50-foot Ethernet cable that just runs along the floor, and people trip on it all the time, and it gets unplugged. And it's like it just ruins everything.
Yeah, but thankfully, right now, my cousins moved out, and my basically my brothers don't use the internet often. And whenever they do, if I tell them that I'm doing something important, they just get off. So it's been mostly manageable nowadays.
And is it like you know that they're giving you like sort of a stink eye when they see that you're playing a really old game, and they would at least expect you to play something modern?
Not really, because as I've mentioned at the beginning of this, is that just gaming in general is like shunned upon here. So whenever I tell them I'm gaming, it's like, can't you do something better with your life? I'm like, no, I don't want to. I'm playing Doom.
Like what?
I've actually I've had a conversation with my dad the other day where I would be like, "Hey, Dad, I have a tournament in 2 days. Can you tell everyone to like get off the internet by then?" And he'd be like, "What are you even doing?" It's like, it's a really important tournament with a prize pool." And then he tells me, "You've been losing for like 7 years now. Why would this tournament be any different?"
So he has a stat sheet.
He gave up on me. I feel so sad.
Son, you've been losing tournaments. I'm really disappointed.
Are you losing, son?
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember the WDL game last season. It was week 3 or something. I was playing against my team was playing Dev's team, and I played Dragon and Toby the first round, and we won. And I was trying to get Shadowstalker some playing time, so I sat Toby, and we lost. And then I was like, "Oh, okay, Toby, get back in." And well, okay, we ended up losing the third round, and you know, I probably learned my lesson. I shouldn't, mess with things that are working. But my brothers were watching the stream, and as soon as I was done with the game, I received more shit from them than I did from anyone on my team about sitting Toby. They were like, "You're a fucking idiot," So I guess you need somebody to poke and prod you, I guess.
Yeah. You need your dad to be your coach for Doom tournaments. Like maybe then you will be like, yeah, he will motivate you to win.
I really doubt it. My dad hates it whenever I stay up for a tournament, which was, now that I think about it, another problem worth mentioning is that since I wasn't allowed to stay up and the majority of the big leagues were American, it would make it really challenging for me to like show up to games that are scheduled really late at my time. I'd be like 2 a.m. and my dad would walk in and it's like, "Why aren't you asleep yet? Go to sleep." I'm like, "I have a tournament." It's like, if I unplug the router, you won't have a tournament.
So I guess now I could, because we're basically fast forwarded to present day. So I want to touch upon a different field of your Doom interest, which is you've basically played Jumpmaze a ton, right?
Yes.
And that's sort of like a sub community of its own. And I really don't know much about that, but you're sort of like a big name in those circles, right?
Yeah.
So, like, is there any sort of like competition in Jump Maze?
Uh, Jumpmaze was a similar situation for the competitive, which is when I started playing Jumpmaze, the competition was dead. I would just play casually, and there would be almost like nobody else. Like sometimes one or two more players would join and play with me, but I would be spending most of my time alone. But if we're talking about right now, then yeah, the competition is actually very fierce. Like I would say, even like it's on par with the competition of the speedrunning of main IWADs, such as Doom and Doom 2. The records are now on Jumpmaze, like most of them are only beatable by ticks instead of seconds.
So what was like? Were you a part of this, like the rising tide, or was there another reason for like the sudden uptick in activity?
I, as I started like slowly getting better, one of the old like there was a clan specific only to Jumpmaze. It was starting to get back, so I would just like try to impress them because apparently there was some sort of test, several maps that I have to finish under specific time to to be allowed into the clan. But once I got through that, I've decided to uh, basically break Wario's uh, records back then, which out of 64 maps, he had around like uh, 45 maps, and all of them were his records. So I just decided to break that record and have a total amount of records that's higher than his, which took me a long time to break, actually. I think once I started, it was only around like a year or 2 years later when I finally managed to break that. But by then, the competition was dying again, which ever since then, I would only like play Jumpmaze occasionally. I would like show up to the server, be like, "Oh, this is fun again." Play for like a month and then forget about it again.
And then last year, Cyber sort of returned from retirement, right, and released Jumpmaze X. Did that anything to competition?
The competition on his WAD Jumpmaze is actually still uh, very one-sided. Like there's still not many that people competing, but in terms of competition, it's still bad. But his maps are actually very popular even before they were released. Whenever he would conduct a testing session to test a new map or like just have a general feel for the whole WAD, uh, like many people would show up. Would be like 10 people in the server, and I would be one of them. I would like always show up to his testing sessions. But even now, which like it's been some time since his WAD was released, but the competition is still pretty dead for it.
Well, and speaking of like related, so basically you have this experience with some sort of a single player dooming through Jumpmaze, and then you started dipping your toes into actual speedrunning on vanilla Doom, actually. So how did that happen? Because that's pretty recent, right?
Yes, I think I started in late 2018, somewhere around there, but I actually can't remember what brought me into the speedrunning community. I'm trying to
Mhm.
remember. Hold on.
Because, for example, like there's been a recent huge influx of players into the speedrunning community, and some of that was due to Carl Jobst doing his Doom videos that brought an influx of
Oh
people.
yeah,
Then there
yeah,
was
you're right. That was actually
there,
what brought me to speedrunning. I saw his video of Doom One record getting broken,
ah, there you
and then
go.
I realized, wait, are you telling me that there's been a speedrunning community and I've been unaware? I remember now. Oh my god. Oh, I guess I removed it from my memory because I found it really embarrassing that I wasn't aware that the community existed. Yeah, but that's pretty much when I started speedrunning. I was like, oh, he uploaded this video. Looks really interesting. Wait, there's a speedrunning community. Let me try it.
I mean, like for example, like last year there was also the speedrunning challenge on the CTF maps, right? That was run on Odomax, and that brought over actually at least Daston suddenly became a speedrunner, and he's made his mark as well. So I was trying to get into what was your cause actually, but it's you're one of the big horde that was brought by KJ.
Uh, I guess I have Carl Jobs to thank for my speedrunning career.
Yeah, and so like you sort of became prominent pretty fast. Like you don't have a lot of demos on the archive, but the ones you have are pretty notable because right now you hold the record for speed episode runs of episode 2, 3, and 4, right?
Uh, I think all of them, even episode 1.
Episode 1 as well?
Yep, all of them. But you know how some speedrunners choose to compete only from map 1 to map 7, and some count map 8 as well. I've actually broke the record for both on every episode except episode 3, where Zero Master is still holding the record for map 1 to map 7.
Yeah, so just to explain this, basically, this has historic reasons, because old school Doom would not show a timer on map 8. So basically, you would only, the last time you would see would be on ending of map 7. And so speedrunners sort of, instead of like trying to get the exact time, they just said, okay, you just count the time of map 7, and then you just need to survive map 8. That's the reasoning. So you could technically have a super fast speedrun of the first 7 maps, and then on the last map you could just take 20 minutes, just lounging around, doing
just
nothing.
Make sure to survive.
And it would still be a record technically. But recently, this logic has started to change. Sort of like this makes no sense. We already know the times. Like we can track the times. So sort of like we're starting to look at times of all 8 maps. But yeah, you've
Here's
beaten
my question
some
for you. Why is it that there are still people who only compete up to map 7? Like Zero Master?
Well, because of the tradition. Like, those are the rules set up since 1994 or something. Like that was the dogma. That was like, and it takes some really long discussions to change anything in Doom speedrunning. So basically, right now, yeah, people are starting to look at like the record, completing all 8 maps, but it's still sort of in the legacy mode that, yeah, the first 7 maps are what everyone used. So when you want to say, yeah, I beat the record, you sort of like need to compare yourself to those guys who only raced on the first 7 maps. It's a fucking chicken and egg problem. Just it's horrible, and it should be changed, but we'll get there eventually.
Well, personally speaking, it'll only change my achievement of episode 3, I guess, because in episode 3, as I've mentioned, Zero Master is still the record holder up to map 7.
You're actually doing your part in changing, because right now when you have a record that's beating basically both of those criteria, we can sort of like start forgetting the first one. Like, she just beat the second one.
All I have to do is beat episode 3 then.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's going to be so difficult. Like that is like arguably one of the toughest records out there. Like Zero Master like squeezed map episode 3 really well.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, these are like, you've beaten some really tough names. Like it was Zero Master all around. Like, he had some like records in all episodes. But I think there was probably a run by. Basically, you've been challenging Zero Master the most, but there was also on E3 actually. That's not Zero Master. That's Chewy. And Chewy really was great at episode 3. I mean, Hi Django.
Wait, really? Wait, Chewy was the record holder before me?
Yeah, isn't that funny how you can just come in after You said you started in 2018, and you can start taking out all these records of people that have been around for 25 years. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, because of course Zero Master is a current beast, but Chewy did all his runs in like, I don't know, 2007, 8, 5, somewhere around those years. So it's still like competition with the past and the present.
Interestingly enough, Doom 1 wasn't what I originally started with. In fact, I wasn't interested in running Doom 1 at all at first because I found it really boring to just shotgun everything instead of using the super shotgun. But ironically, even after all this time, I can't get a single run of Doom 2, like all 30 maps, without dying somewhere or screwing up somewhere, and I just like say fuck this and end the run.
It's sort of like, because Doom actually has all those weaker monsters, it's more about running away from them, just making a clean run without shooting anything you really don't have to. While in Doom 2, you sort of have to tangle with more dangerous monsters and manipulate archviles and, be careful about cyber demons. It's sort of like, yeah, it from a position of a Jumpmaze player, I would say, like someone who's used to running, no monster a lot. Doom 1 is sort of like home. Like you just shoot maybe one or two shotgunners or zombies every now and then, and otherwise you ignore everything, which is not the case for Doom 2.
Doom 2, I feel like everything factors in, like the additional types of monsters, the map layout, the extra tricks that you have to, the rocket jumps, and the fact that you have to do all of that, all 30 maps in one go, as opposed to Doom 1, where they're divided into episodes. Like, the bar was raised a lot for Doom 2, which is why I have not been able to submit a single demo.
You can actually do episodic runs for Doom 2 as well. It's sort of underappreciated these days, but yeah, you can do episode 2 of Doom 2 as well.
Wait, really? I was
just saying.
Yeah. I have not been aware of this. I should have done this.
Like, for example, if you have a really good attempt at 30 UV and you die at map 18, for example, you can still upload that as a record for E1 of Doom 2. Like if your like time at map 10 is the record, that's still an E1 record.
I'll definitely look into that.
There you go.
That actually motivates me. I've been losing motivation lately. I've been playing Doom 2 every single day. Even today, before this podcast, I was trying on Doom 2, but I ended up almost smashing my keyboard when the Cyber Demon decided to be, let's just say, a douchebag. Keep it friendly here.
So have you looked into like any of the speedrunning on PWAS, or are you staying away from that? Like, is that an ocean you don't want to be drowned in?
The thing for PWAS is it's just like what you said. It feels like if I go in, I will just drown in the ocean that is all the PWAS out there. But there are actually like a few PWAS that stand out for me, which I might eventually try them out. One of them is Scythe, since I believe, obviously, I've seen a few videos from Zero Master, King Dime, and a task by For Shock Blast, I believe. Yeah, that was really.
So you're talking
insane.
About 30 UV again?
Probably, yeah. Just right off the bat. 30 UV. Another one would be Sunlust. Although Sunlust, I would
Oh,
probably be focusing on UV max, but ILs.
yeah, yeah. Because I was thinking like 30 UV max, 30 UV of Sunlast, because
It's like I'm
that's
not
the
direct. I'm
pride
sorry.
run. Oh,
I've
that's
watched him
a
suffer
really high
for
hurdle.
so long. There's no way I'm gonna go through the same thing.
Yeah, those are runs that these guys are like training for like 6 9 months to even get one exit. Holy crap!
Yeah, I commend their mentality, but I lack that sort of mentality. My keyboard would like last less than a 30 UV sunlight exit.
Do you find that when you're trying to get better times and as so what Doom mentioned is Doom One's a little bit more like running away from monsters, and then you've got a lot more to deal with in Doom Two, and so you really have to work on your movement. And do you find that practicing this as much as you do that it translates to some of the other competitive game modes that you play, like CTF? Do you find that um, you can use tricks that a lot of people, you can use myself, you can use me as an example, that we wouldn't be able to do, that might help you get a leg up?
Probably the other way around, actually. Like playing in competitive and in Jumpmaze helped me a lot with starting off on Doom speedrunning. But every time I play like Crispy Doom, which is the port that I use to speedrun Doom, I'd like launch Sandronum later and find that my aim is off because I'm used to like uh, in Crispy Doom, much like ZDMN, it just keeps the vanilla style and the vanilla settings, and then you have Zendronum that uses OpenGL and looks more modern. So every time I do that switch, it throws me off a little bit. So it's kind of bad, actually.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I can totally see from my own experience that yeah, switching between uh, setups is why for example I was never into playing with OpenGL. Personally, I would just stuck to software whenever I could to lessen that weirdness difference. But yeah, for example, the different mouse behavior in every port is sort of like annoying on a deep level.
Oh yeah, now that I think about it, there is one thing that Doom speedrunning helped me in terms of playing in competitive or even Jumpmaze, and that's SR50. In Zandronum, a three button SR50 is like became normal, but in Doom speedrunning, three button SR50 is considered cheating. So I had to go through the trouble of binding of like my turn left and turn right on my mouse, and I had to like practice from scratch on using those for SR50. But it
Mhm.
made it like made just using three button SR50 just that much easier for me.
Yeah, like it's sort of like there's actually quite a bit of the core skills mechanics that's shared between UV speedrunning and deathmatching, like dueling or running flags. Like the sort of aim you need in say CTF defense is not translatable to single player because you don't need to aim at monsters really. They're so slow that they're basically static. But the core movement when you're running UV speed or escaping from someone chasing you with the SSG, yeah, that's really important, and that's translatable.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I asked that was because I always felt like, for me, I try to pride myself, I guess, on, if I could play on any laptop or any computer or whatever because my setup is so simple. But I also think that the evolution of my game or my movement. I mean, I don't really have any, so it's more about actually being able to aim and like using my brain, whereas lots of people are doing the speedrunning thing, they're doing Jumpmaze, they're rocket jumping and all this stuff, and it seemed to me like you could kind of steal stuff from other avenues and translate them into capture the flag or duels or whatever. But yeah, I think that's interesting that you think it's actually more harmful. It's almost like when you are playing one port, like playing Xandronum a lot, and then you go to play Otomex, and it's like, God, what the hell? The setup is so completely different that it takes you a minute to adjust. But
Surprisingly, I don't actually have that much problem going from Zandronum to Automix or Automix to Zandronum. Like the the differences I feel are minimal for me, but going to Z Demon or to Classic Doom speedrunning is is entirely different for me. I don't know why.
well, I mean, I think we learned quite a bit. I mean, like we've said a couple times, a really unique story, and the fact that you were able to actually play games at all is kind of a miracle. And then to make this transition from someone that just played, against bots to one
You're
of
probably
the
gonna hold this on me
best
for the
players
rest
that
of
we
my
have
life.
today. No, I'm not at all. It's. I mean, where you got to learn somewhere. I mean, but yeah, it's a cool it's a cool rise from basically just being an unknown player to where you are now, breaking records and captaining in all the capture the flag leagues and doing really well in duel tournaments. Maybe not winning, much to your dad's chagrin, but I'm not sure if there's any other part of your your history that you wanted to talk about. But I mean, I think it's a really unique story. I'm glad we got to tell a little bit of it.
Oh, and uh, what? One more question: like, where do you see yourself in the Doom future? Possibly, like, do you want to say something about that?
Uh, well, I'm probably moving to Germany very soon as well, hopefully. But that's not gonna stop me from probably just dragging my setup with me, getting a decent connection, and then smashing some more noobs in Doom. Probably gonna
No,
be playing Doom for a couple more years at the very least.
so playing Doom with 20 milliseconds ping, is that what we're
Yes.
looking at? The Dsparil
No
dual
more
opener.
handicaps, hopefully. And then I'll start playing bad.
So will you be one of those players who will complain about Brazilians abusing lag reconciliation?
Ah, no. I'm gonna be one of those who says hyping makes you shoot first.
The tropes.
Sorry, Denzo.
Yeah. So if there's anything that we didn't cover, um, what do you think?
Probably not. But just a message out
Okay.
there to all the players is that if I rose from absolutely nothing, like the absolute worst conditions to play on Doom, you have no excuse to quitting this game.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
I
you
use
can
that.
you can start with bots.
Yeah.
And you'll be as good as this Dsparil eventually.
I mean, you have to find a port that actually has bots because those are actually limited. But yeah, you can play with bots. And then if you look at it so you look at it from Dsparil's perspective, you could look at it from my perspective too. You could fall from grace and still be here And anything's possible. Anything is possible. That's the underlying part of this episode, is that anything is possible.
Do it.
And if you've made it this far,
Do it.
You can be like me. You can go off the beat and just get the table duty, just pushing paper.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you for being on the show, Dsparil. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for hosting me and listening to my story.
Yo, what up, Doom is Deadites? It's your producer here, The Motherlode, just reminding you once again, if you like this show, there's a lot more out there like it. You can find all that stuff on inthekeep.com. You can also find ways to support our shows in the Keep, Doom is Dead, and Burning Bridges with Bridge Burner. You can find our Patreon links there, and you can find our merch store and buy whatever the fuck you want on there. We don't mind at all. Till next time, remember that Doom is dead or whatever. I don't know what Bones wants me to say here, but inthekeep.com, doomfederation.com. You're beautiful. I love you. Stay in the keep, bitches.